Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Vegan Proteins Muscles by Brussels Radio. My name is Coach Sawyer,
And I'm Alice.
and I don't even know what episode this is, but it doesn't matter because we stopped counting. So, hey, Alice, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. This week, I feel much better. February has been a doozy month
Really?
between like the weather, crazy weather.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the weather's always bad in February, but also like I am just getting over like a minor back injury. I'm
Mm.
just getting over a cold. I had a colonoscopy on Friday. Poor Carson had terrible food poisoning last week.
Oh my God.
So we were both just like, while I was going through like the colonoscopy stuff, like he's sick.
Mm-hmm. That's terrible.
Like,
Yeah,
so this week is good. I'm just mentally preparing for the cruise.
that's right. That's coming up. That's really exciting. Tell me a little bit about how do you keep yourself sane like when you're going through all that? Like what do you tell yourself? Cuz like I'm sure it affected training, I'm sure it affected nutrition. Like how do you like what's the like your mantra for times like that? I'm curious if you have one.
When I'm injured, you mean?
Mhm.
I
Injured,
just try to
sick.
do
Yeah.
anything, yeah, sick or injured. I just try to stick to routines.
Mhm.
I find a lot of comfort in having routines.
Mhm.
And I still try to find ways that I'm able to like contribute to my health, right? So
Mhm.
I feel like I'm not just at the standstill.
Mhm.
So with my back specifically, there was a lot of mobility stuff that I was working on
Mhm.
without, very careful not to overdo it. There's a difference between mobility and like, rehab
Mhm.
work that like the category, the buckets of PT stuff,
Mhm.
making sure that I'm getting steps in. Man, I got a bunch of stuff. I even got a TENS unit this
Oh
time.
wow. Dang. Okay.
So there was a lot of stuff that I did that was like, all right, we're still like doing all of these things to move in a positive direction.
Yeah.
It still doesn't make it feel any less like I'm a prisoner in my bed, I'm a prisoner
Yeah.
in my home. It's like, it's maddening when you're an active person, when you're an
Mhm.
athlete, like all this good stuff going for you, and suddenly it's like slam on the brakes.
Yeah. No, I like that you say that though. Like you kind of keep a routine or you kind of pivot. Like I think what's the worst thing you can do when you hit a block point like that is to just stop doing everything because then you're not even gonna feel like yourself and then it's gonna be hard to get back into it. I think instead what to realize is like there's gotta be something I can still do, right? Like you said, you channeled it into steps. You got even more steps, like maybe your training wasn't what you wanted it to be, but you still like kind of train around it and then you do some steps or whatever you do. And that's your new normal until you feel back. Like I always bring this up, but like the Bugs Life thing where they're like, we're going to walk around the leaf. Like for a while, you have to go and just do something a little different, but you can't stop because if you stop, you might spiral, in my experience.
And also nutritionally, like, I think a lot of us will want to default to like, I'm just not going to eat anything because I'm not moving.
Hmm.
Like that's like one of the worst things you can do. So also
Hmm.
trying to really dial in your nutrition during that time.
Yeah.
Maybe you can distract yourself with some new recipes or something,
Yeah.
or just doing better food logging. Like let's dial in what we can control right now.
Hmm.
Use this time productively,
I
making
love
sure
that.
you're enough calories so that your body has the fuel to
Hmm.
heal, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
What do you do about that?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because, we're always going, 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 and injuries and sickness, like those are times where I know it's not ideal and you might not be making the most physical progress, but you can make a lot of mental and like habit type gains by, yeah, reimagining, okay, what about this recipe that default to? Could I make this even better for my goals right now? What if I tried a new recipe? What if I try, you know what I mean? Like you could sit with that and make improvements with that so that when you are back up on your feet again, you can even make more progress and have even more sustainability. So I like the idea of being like, okay, what I can't do this, but what can I do? You know,
Mhm.
focusing on what you can control. So yeah, I think that's great advice. And you mentioned nutrition. which is great because that's a good segue into what we're talking about today. We're going to discuss, and I suspect this is going to be a longer one, so buckle up, people. But I just got out of a cut. Alice is a bikini pro, so and now pro strong woman. So I actually do. How do you qualify for pro strong woman? By the way, just a brief
Okay,
aside.
so there's barely really any pro.
Oh, okay.
It's strong woman. The natural federations, I believe, don't have a pro card route.
Oh, okay.
It's just like you go and you compete. It's
Hmm.
such a niche sport.
Hmm.
I think it's growing. I think it's gaining popularity,
Hmm.
but of course, it's going to gain popularity slower with women.
Hmm.
So it's just, trying to compete, choosing your federation.
Hmm. Well, that's cool. But at any rate, you're now in this world, right? Of strong man, strong woman, and it's really cool to see. So you've kind of been all over the map in terms of like these are the dieting preferences that I need to have, or requirements rather that I need to have for this athletic endeavor. And probably your bodybuilding experience is going to be the most drawn upon in this episode because we're really trying to focus on how the heck do we lose fat without just feeling starving,
Mhm.
because you and I both know there's, parameters you can set, but there's also how you go about, chasing those things that's going to make it easier or harder depending on which kind of route you choose, right? Or I guess I shouldn't say route, but like is a big gray area. It's a spectrum of like how easy or hard it will feel depending on your food selection and timing and all the stuff we're going to talk about today. So, before we get into that, when somebody is planning a cutting phase, what do you think are some of the things that they should expect going into it? And what are the things you like to tell people as they kind of enter this realm and they have to be ready for some things? Because I have some in mind, but I want to hear yours first.
I think just having the expectation that there will be times when you're hungry, but and here's the difference. I think a lot of people go into a diet expecting, yeah, sure, I'm going to be hungry. But I think
Hmm.
a lot of people go into the diet thinking, I'm going to be hungry all the time and just suffering.
Hmm.
If you are, that's the case, then something's wrong. Sure, there are going to be time periods in the day where it hits you, and there'll be, certain phases of your diet when it gets a little bit harder. But if you are just like dying like that, then
Hmm.
something's got to change.
Hmm.
There are so many strategies that Sawyer and I are going to go over to try and help you through that. But what about you, Sawyer?
I actually, that was the biggest one I was going to say is like, you might be a little hungry sometimes and you might get a little bit tired of your food selection being limited. And maybe that affects downstream your social activities you feel like you can participate in. But if it ever turns into suffering, just keep communicating with me. That's why being in a coaching relationship, it's really nice when you can just say, hey, like, just vent to me because I will be able to discern like, is this normal amount of struggle and learning and growth within a cut, or is this like just physically you are just suffering and we need to pull you
Hmm.
out of it or do something different? Yeah, I like how you say that because from the outset, like, especially depending on how you go into it and their level of experience with cutting, you could have differing levels of hunger. Some people when they start like barely notice, like they're like, oh, I'm losing weight, cool. They don't, some of that has to do with how much body fat they have to start, but some of it is genetic too. There are people that, just don't feel as hungry as often. Their bodies are just not as sensitive or attuned to when they are in a deficit as others. And so until you've done a cut, it's hard to tell which person you will be. I mean, you can know like, oh yeah, I like food. So you might have you know, an inkling, but going into a sustained calorie deficit is a little bit different than daily fluctuations in calories and things like that. So anticipate that you will get hungrier at some point, but the intensity and the timeline of that, it depends on the person. So from there, I think now we got to start getting into the hacks. But, we talked about briefly before this. I think a good place to start with that is talking about calorie density. How I like to frame this for people is like there's a spectrum of like very satiating for per calorie to not very satiating at all per calorie. And you have to think about the foods that you select in a strategic way. Like if it's the end of the day and you're pretty fine, like you could eat or not eat and you're like, well, I have 200 calories left. I'm going to eat this candy bar or whatever. Cool. That's fine. That's a situation in which like you're not really risking like white knuckling it to get to the goal. You're just kind of like, yeah, I could not. Yeah, I'm gonna treat myself, whatever. But if you're at the beginning of the day and you've been hungry the last few days and you decide, I'm gonna start my day with a candy bar, eh, like you might be setting yourself up for some misery later. So, I think strategically speaking, these things can fit, but you have to think, okay, where am I get the most bang for my buck in terms of foods that if I eat this, I know I'm going to be full for X amount of time to X degree, and it's going to take out this percentage of my calories for the day. And the more that you kind of keep framing it that way, the better you're going to be able to be at saying like, well, I'm going to allow myself some room here at the end of the day for a little bit of snacks, or I'm going to do eat this and this and this, and this is going to keep me full for the most part with this amount of calories that I have. There's always a little bit of recalibrating you have to do when macros change. But for the most part, if you kind of set your macros, where you think that they need to be or where your coach does, and then within the confines of those plan, okay, I think I can get full with this, this, and this, trying that out time and time again, day after day, getting those reps in, you will start to gravitate towards the foods that are like satiating enough and give you a little bit of leeway for some fun foods, so that you don't go absolutely crazy. So that's kind of how I like to frame it, because I think for me to prescribe things, like I give people an example day of eating, but for me to say, and I always include some fun foods in there, but for me to say, hey, you should eat this exact thing or whatever, just that kind of takes away somebody's autonomy. And it also assumes that I know what they're going to enjoy and what's going to serve them best. And I just think that's doing them a disservice. What do you have to say about that?
I Before I forget, because that's a really good point. Sample meal plans. They're super helpful to people, but yeah, they also make me somewhat uncomfortable because I always make sure to stress. Yes, it's a sample.
Mm-hmm.
When I do create them, I usually ask 20 questions because I want to give them something that is going to be valuable to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, give me like 2 or 3 examples of what breakfast you eat, what lunch you eat, what dinner you eat,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a handful of favorite snacks. And then I can piece together something that
Mm-hmm.
is meaningful.
Yeah.
And I always definitely caveat that with, you can use this as like this is how you figure out like these are portion sizes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
want you to take this and try and make your own as soon as possible because
Mm-hmm.
we don't want you to do the same thing day in,
Mm-hmm.
day out, right?
Yeah.
But I loved how you talked about the spectrum when it comes to voluminous foods versus calorie dense foods.
Mm-hmm.
Our more voluminous foods are obviously going to be things like fruits and vegetables, right? But there's also like different fruits and vegetables that are more dense and
Mm-hmm.
more voluminous,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we're talking about fruits, things like berries and melons are
Mm-hmm.
going to be very, very voluminous, right? Meaning you can have a larger portion and it's fewer calories.
Mm-hmm.
But then on the other end, we're talking about like dates. Dates are always my example of like the
Yeah.
ultra dense fruit. But also, you know, bananas are kind of in the middle, but they're more on the, denser side.
Yeah.
Apples, pears, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things, that's
Mm-hmm.
more dense.
I think apples are somewhere in the middle,
Yeah,
probably,
yeah,
right?
they are.
Yeah.
They are.
But and like dried fruit is pretty much always on the more dense side. Like it just shrinks everything down and makes it more, and also it's usually sweetened, so it's like crazy delicious and you just want eat a bunch
Yeah,
of it.
you try and find ones that are like no sugar added if possible, but obviously the food companies want to make it delicious for you, so they're usually going to like roll them around in some sugary syrup or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No,
so
definitely.
there's that spectrum, but there's also um, okay, well, talking about a little bit more like dense vegetables, I'd say
Mhm.
before I move on with that,
Yeah.
things like potatoes are going to be really dense.
Mhm.
Things like legumes are going to be really dense,
You mean or you
right?
mean you mean sparse, like voluminous in terms of
Those
calories?
are those are the more dense like vegetables.
Oh, you mean oh, I see what you're saying. So you're saying like, okay, starchy carbs, maybe gonna be a little bit more in terms of on the spectrum in terms of that class of food, gonna be a little bit more calories than something like green beans, for example. That was one of my go-tos when I was cutting.
Green beans is kind of in the middle. But green beans and peas, I would say, is in the middle,
Oh
and
wow,
are
you're a
very
pro. Wait, what do
are
you
going to be like,
oh, what do you go for? Yeah, we here.
of course, going to be like greens, like
Mhm.
leafy greens.
Mhm.
They're going to be our like broccoli and our cauliflower.
Mhm.
Carrots are kind of in the middle, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
really, really, really voluminous things, guys, peppers. So if you get like, I love the frozen fajita vegetable
Mhm.
mixes. Now they have onions in there, which onions are solid in the middle, right?
Mm.
Slightly towards the more voluminous side, but those red and green and orange peppers that are all sliced up in there, like those are basically free. Like I
Mm.
rely on those a lot. Um,
Yeah. That's a good one.
cabbage,
Yeah.
these
Leafy
kinds of things
leafy
are really good.
greens. What about
Yeah.
mushrooms? Where did that fall on your spectrum?
Mushrooms are more on the voluminous side
Mhm.
because you have to eat so many of them. But mushrooms are great because they are just like they have unique protein in them,
Mhm.
and they just have a lot of micronutrients that you can't find in other things.
Mhm.
So if you are a person that likes mushrooms, I'm like, man, include some mushrooms in your diet,
Yeah.
right?
I like that. No, it's interesting. As you're talking, I'm like, wow, actually, I thought that was like on the more voluminous side. Like green beans, I would have classified on the more voluminous side, but I'm also not a pro bikini competitor. So you like
Well,
hats
we're
off to
talking
you.
about vegetables. So I mean, every vegetable is going to be, for the most part, voluminous.
Mhm.
So, this is kind of a very niche thing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Obviously, the most dense foods are going to be
Ultra
these
processed.
more processed foods, right? And I don't want to say that in a way that I hate the word processed because it scares people. Processed does not necessarily mean bad, but
Mhm.
the most calorie dense things, your donuts, your pizza, your cake,
Mhm.
your cookies, your
Mhm.
chips, right? All these things.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
I don't know, do you have anything to add to that one?
Okay. How about what if we moved on to protein sources on
Well, hang
spectrum?
on, hang on.
Sorry.
I want to talk about also, you talked about on the sliding scale, like
Mhm.
there's a difference between fullness and like stomach stretching.
Mhm.
So a lot of foods when we're dieting, when we're eating these really voluminous foods, they won't necessarily, because they don't have like so many calories, because they don't have as much, right? They're very like heavy foods.
Mhm.
They won't necessarily make us feel like full, but
Mhm.
there's fullness, and then there's like the stomach stretching,
Mhm.
right? And when you're dieting, you can really, really trick your stomach and your body into feeling satisfied by filling up with voluminous foods and giving that like stomach stretching feeling.
Mhm.
So those are some of the things that can really like
Mhm.
help save you through a challenging diet, especially as you get further and further into the diet, right?
Right, right. Because it's like your body knows that you're underfunding it with calories. Like it starts to understand more and more. And hormonally, it will start to send louder and louder signals for you to eat more calories. But in the meantime, while your body's catching on, you can almost like do the little Indiana Jones switcheroo. Doesn't work forever, but it does work for a while. If you're like, okay, I'm going to take this space that I used to be filling with oily potatoes and switch it out for leafy greens with a protein source or something, that is going to make a difference in terms of the calories, but not necessarily the space taken up, is what we're saying.
Mhm.
And while your body is catching on, you're going to be losing fat all the while. And then by the time you're like really hungry, because eventually your body will catch on and be like, we're not doing this anymore. I'm done. That's when you bring the calories back up to maintenance and you're fine. Yeah, I like how you put that though, because also sometimes people will say, I'll eat a salad and I'm just still so hungry. And so I think that's why it's worth mentioning and going over like protein sources too, because I think there is something to not only, space being taken up in your stomach, but also having some real, I don't know what the word is, but like some dense, something that's dense. That's something that's harder for your body to kind of get through and feels like a heavier weight in your stomach. And I think part of that is protein and part of that is probably some fiber intake as well. But let's go
And some
over.
fat
Yeah,
and strategic.
I would agree with that. I would love to, let's go over all of those. So let's talk about protein first. Where do you kind of set your kind of spectrum? Where are the poles of that spectrum for you?
So when I'm dieting, and this is something that's a little in the weeds, but if anyone has done macro tracking before, when you're dieting, you really, really want to think about what foods can I get that are protein, that are pretty much all protein. Like if you like, I have Chronometer, so I always think about
Mhm.
that chart, right? Like it's like, oh, this food is this much protein
Mhm.
and this much carbs and this much fats, right? You want it to look like that. You want it to be like this is a mostly protein food.
Yeah.
most of the time, because it's going to allow you to sort of save those carbs and fats for some more enjoyable foods.
Mhm.
So those are like, especially when I'm like really, really, really like close to competition, that's what the kind of foods that I'm looking for, right?
Mhm.
So my number one recommendation is always anything seitan,
Seitan.
gluten.
Yeah, I knew it.
The vital gluten is the secret ingredient in seitan. You know, they wash flour so that it pulls out the proteins from like the wheat. Basically, it's basically like pure wheat protein.
Mhm.
And they use that to make seitan, which is a form of mock meats, and they use that to make like it's a form of flour, so you can put it in anything with flour and then create voila these amazing high protein like baked goods, basically
It's amazing.
anything that's ready. And that is my favorite thing. We talk about girl dinners, right? This is like girl guys, seriously.
Girl protein. I like that. Well, no, it's so versatile and it's cheap and it's I mean not cheap cheap, but it is in terms of like it is cheap in terms of like proteins, right? Cuz like everybody knows protein's probably the most expensive thing to buy. But yeah, in terms of like relative cost, in terms of protein density per gram, like it just tops the charts in all these ways. And I do think that some people demonize it because, gluten gets a bad rap for whatever reason. But also, I think people like when they hear, oh, it's processed, or a mock meat, like those kind of words get associated with things that are unhealthy. But I think when you said, what we're looking for in a protein source is things that are just mostly protein and not so much other things. Because yeah, it does give you more flexibility and it's going to allow you to get more full with more protein without fluff. You know what I mean? Like if for instance, and I'm not saying that this is an unhealthy food, but if all your protein came from lentils, like whole lentils, you would have a lot more carbs than protein, and that would probably affect how successful you would be at getting enough protein on in a dieting phase, and it might kind of overwhelm your digestion in some ways. But it's a
You would
very
probably
healthy
end up
food.
going over in your carbs and under in your protein,
Yeah,
right? That's
exactly.
that's how you would land at the end of the day if you were relying on lentils, beans.
Mhm. Right. And we're not saying those are unhealthy foods by any means. They're very healthy, but you just have to be conscious of what are my goals right now? And is this going to kind of put me in a situation in which I'm not getting enough protein for my needs to maintain muscle and even make more and to be as satiated as possible. Now, that's where we can get into the distinction between what is more satiating, fiber or protein. I think they're both important. And they each have like their pros and cons. But I think that in terms of fiber sources, legumes and whole grains like are top of the charts for that. We just have to be conscious of the fact that they do come along with a lot of carbs and that can affect the dieting phase. So you might have to temporarily reduce some of those healthier fiber containing foods, trying to keep your fiber decent, right? But also keeping in mind like they do come along with those carbs and the carbs are really something we need to keep an eye on. Um when we're dieting. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So is that like how do you think about fiber in the context of a diet? Like how do you kind of advise people kind of think about it, in other words?
So with fiber, it really depends on a person's like age, I guess. I help a lot of women who are in perimenopause or past menopause,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna have a lot more stress on fiber, like for trying to get them fiber in each meal so that they have something that's sort of like their body's working on throughout the day, right?
Mhm.
But for most other people, I have a similar take. Like we definitely want to make sure we're getting at least 2 servings of vegetables, at least 1 serving of fruit every day.
Mhm.
But beyond that, trying to, it's another spectrum. Right?
Mhm.
There's flexible dieting mindset where it's like, I can eat anything I want as long as
Mhm.
it meets my macros.
Mhm.
But then if you're just like following the Twinkie diet, right? Like that's the extreme example, but a lot of people will be like, let's see how much good stuff I can fit in. You're
Mhm.
not going to feel good. That's not going to be health promoting.
Yeah.
And so we have to keep in mind, like, all right, let's get as much healthy food, satiating food in while
Mhm.
still keeping us sane and being able to fit in a treat here or there to be
Mhm.
like, all right, I just had something good. This diet isn't torture.
Agreed. Agreed. I think what I tell people when they're like anticipating being hungry or noticing hunger, I tell them to look at 4 things in their diet and their dietary pattern is, okay, protein. Are you getting a decent amount of protein? Is that something that you're checking that box? And it's probably not. You know what I mean? Because it's like diminishing returns. If somebody's eating 100 grams of protein, going to 110 might help, 120 might help, but past that, or wherever their needs are, like I'm talking about like maybe a standard female, going much higher, 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 like going from that 130 to 150, that might be helpful. 150 to 170, like now you're kind of getting
Talking
into
about amount of protein in a day.
yeah, yeah. Like if you start getting to an amount where it's like very like unnecessary physiologically, and you're kind of putting all your eggs, proverbial eggs, in that basket of like, I just need high protein to get satiated, you're gonna have diminishing returns. So I think protein's a factor, but it's not everything. And so I talk about these other factors being fiber, water, and volume. So protein, fiber, water, volume. I try to give people a good mix of those things. And if people send me a list of what they're eating and I notice one of those things is very low, that's usually what I'll say. Let's try bringing that thing up. So if the volume of their food could use some work, I'm like, hey, let's throw some leafy greens into this type of meal. Let's throw some berries into that one. Let's see if that makes a difference. If they're not getting like any fiber, I'm like, well, let's try maybe a little bit more whole grains or a little bit more legumes in there and see what happens. And if their protein's low, same thing. So I think having those things and realizing, okay, maybe it's one of these things that I can mess with that can make the difference in my terms of my satiation. That can make a big difference.
For recommended proteins,
Yeah.
I
Good question.
would say, what are some of yours?
Yeah, for me, TVP was a big one.
That's
Edamame
another
pasta.
one that's like
Yeah.
protein,
Yeah.
like carbs
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no fat.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's a great one, and I think when people get over the whole process label and realize that these things are like very minimally processed and also just basically like extracted protein from plants, like it's a really really useful thing to have because then if like I said, if we're looking at the whole and you're like, "Oh, my protein's a little low." Okay, cool, a little TVP, bring that back up without downside of having like, "Oh, now my carbs are way up here," or whatever. So, that's something TVP, edamame protein puffs were critical in this last one. Oh my gosh, those are huge. What else did I do a lot of in this last cut? Oh,
The Big Mountain,
the big what? No, I didn't. What is that again?
Big Mountain fava bean tofu, guys.
Yeah, that's
So it's
right.
a little difficult to find, but they are being successful. I remember they used to be like $8 a block,
Whoa.
but recently they came down, at least around here, to about $6 a block. And that's
Yeah.
still not great, but it's like, well, that's a big price difference, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's worth it when I'm cutting because it's so you look, this is one of those products you look at the back and you're like, if you know
Nah.
anything about macros, you're like, is this a lie? Like, how can something made from beans be like 0 carbs, 0 fat, all protein? Like,
Yeah.
it literally the label looks like that.
Yeah. That's
But
cool.
it is really, really good, guys. Heads up, it's not what you would think of regular tofu. When I remember the first time I tried it, I almost like spit it out like immediately because the texture is so protein like, so like the protein food that I almost was just like it had like the same mouth feel as like chicken, you
Wow.
know?
That's trippy.
So it kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, speaking of
But
that, go ahead.
when you get used, like once you anticipate that, once you learn how to make it the way you like it's worth it. And
Mm,
and like Sawyer said, a lot of times proteins are going to be your more costly foods.
mhm,
That is why I advocate so much for learning to make your own.
mhm.
I'm a lazy person in the kitchen, but I'm always in the kitchen. So me, I'm about trying to find like the easiest recipes possible. I'm a big fan of purchasing like the appliances that you need to be able to do a lot of the work for you. Take a lot of that time out of the kitchen,
Mhm,
set it and forget it type of things.
mhm,
Seitan. If you go and you buy like seitan or well, we can't make fava bean tofu, right? But we can make tofu, I guess.
mhm.
But seitan is a great example. You buy that in the store, that's going to be one of the most expensive, like vegan
Yeah.
specialty products,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But if you purchase a bag of Vital Wheat gluten off of
Mhm.
Amazon in bulk, then you all of a sudden can make so much seitan and so much like cool protein baked goods.
Yeah.
That's that's like where it's at.
It's a game
And
changer. Mhm.
it's a game changer. And you talk about like people being worried about like how processed these vegan proteins are. Once you learn how they're made, you actually realize it's not really that serious of processing.
Mhm.
You look at the ingredients list and you're like, huh, this is what I would put in it if I were at home trying
Mhm.
to flavor it myself. A lot of these products are very clean, actually.
Mhm.
And so, just for the value alone, like learning to make seitan, learning to make some of these things yourself is huge.
Mhm.
But
And not
I
to
don't have anything
mention
to add to that.
if the alternative is a dead body, I don't know how people
Right.
are like, "Oh, I'm gonna have this, steak," and be like, "That's totally fine." I just think that's a product of cultural conditioning. But anyway, beside the point. Yeah, seitan is top tier, S tier protein source for vegans, especially if it's homemade. But here's the thing: if you don't mind spending a little bit more money, and it helps you indulge a little bit more and feel like you're getting kind of to double dip in terms of like, I really enjoy this, and it's like a good protein source for me. I do enjoy getting some vegan mock meats. I like getting the Daring chickens when they're on sale, Morningstar chicken strips, and Beyond Steak tips. Like those things, man,
Hmm.
those hit the spot, but also they're really good in terms of protein to low calories. So I leaned on those in my cut for when I was like, man, I'm really craving something tasty. I don't want to have to spend too much time making it, or I'm in a pinch, and I didn't mind spending a little bit more money, or they were on sale or something, and then I'll
Hmm.
go nuts. So yeah.
Specify with the daring. Make sure you're getting the unbreaded daring. When you get the ones that are like the flavored wings, then you're getting like a breaded and fried product, right? So the macros are not as friendly. So you're looking for the green bag
Hmm.
of the.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, so that all those products I really like. I'm sure there's way more. Tofurkey is a great one. Tofurkey slices, especially, basically just seitan, but you don't have to make it, so it's cool.
And wasn't Light Life Gimme Lean also
Yeah.
sentient?
Oh
I
yeah.
think it was.
Yeah, I think it is Vital Wheat gluten, and the flavor. I don't know how they do that, but it's amazing.
It's hard to find now.
It is hard to find. And speaking of hard to find, the Kite Hill Greek yogurt, amazing, amazing macros, tastes so good, and yeah, kind of pricey, kind of hard to find. Like in terms of if you're like gonna do this, you're gonna cut your 12 weeks. You're like, I'm gonna do this. It could be a real nice
Technically, that
thing.
is soy, guys. That technically that's not vital wheat gluten in there, but
Yeah, true.
just in case there's any confusion there. Do you have any brands of TVP that you want to recommend? I have a few if you don't.
Yeah, go ahead. I just kind of grab whatever I can.
So you can get so there's textured vegetable protein, which in general refers to soy based. And then
Hmm.
there's textured pea protein. Obviously,
Hmm.
we're not going to call it TPP. Most people call it textured pea protein. But you can get these unflavored, right? And there's a variety of brands, right? Most of the time, you're just going to go into a grocery store and it's like, oh, Bob's Red Mill TPP, right?
Hmm.
That's the most readily available in the store.
Right.
But there are lots of brands that create like flavored that they season it for you,
Hmm.
and then you just pretty much have to hydrate it or cook it the way that you want.
Hmm.
And I always recommend to people Plant Boss,
Mm.
Rolling
I
Greens,
love that
Rolling
one.
Greens, I think I Plant Basics. And there's also the Gardein beef crumbles in the white bag.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's probably more. Like if you ever see anything that's like a crumble,
Hmm.
chances are it's TVP, and you
Hmm.
could have saved some money by getting it, by getting the
Yeah.
unflavored and seasoning
Yeah.
it yourself. But if you want that convenience, it's cool to support these brands
Mhm,
sometimes.
mhm, and honorable mention, I will say, protein powder, obviously classic. I don't love to
But
rely on it
but
all the time, but
protein powder isolate, guys.
mhm, yeah, it's gonna be way less calories per, serving, and way higher protein. And then lastly, I guess I would include, what was I gonna say? Dang, there was one. Oh, protein cereals in general. Like, I know I talked about edamame protein puffs. Those are hard to get if you don't get them online. Sometimes they're even sold out online.
Well, now we're like out of protein cereals. I mean, there are a ton of
Really?
cereals that claim to be protein cereals,
Hmm.
but, like, now that the Wheaties protein is discontinued,
Did they stop
sadness,
it? Oh, no.
did. I know. The Wheaties protein is discontinued. Now we're pretty much just left with
Sad.
little post-premiere protein cereal.
Yeah.
If only Ben were here, honorable mention for Ben, who
Yeah.
pretty much lived off of, post-premiere protein cereal
I
during his
still don't know how he did that. Like one time we went to a grocery outlet in Washington State and they were $1 a box. So me and the twins, you know, the Watton twins, we like showed up, filled our carts with them and left. And we had probably like, I don't know, like I think those guys got like 50 boxes each. It was insane. So that lasted them a while. But like after a while going through that stash, I was like, I don't want this stuff anymore. And it was definitely not the length of a prep. So I don't know how the hell he did that. But that cereal is really good in terms of macros and the taste is pretty good too. But man, I stopped eating it for like a year or two after that because I was just like, I'm so sick of this stuff.
Yeah, I would save the protein cereal, honestly, for when you're traveling. That's
Mm,
probably the single most convenient protein source that I can
yeah,
actually, like, get myself to eat when I'm traveling and on a very, very busy trip. Did we
I eat it all the
say we
time.
didn't mention other brands of seitan? Upton's is the main brand.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin Farms is usually pretty easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
These can be pricey. I'd say Upton's is like the gold standard. If you've
Mm-hmm.
never tried seitan before, try Upton's.
Mm-hmm.
That's you'll just know, like, this is what seitan is supposed to taste like. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you want to find some seitan for a little bit more economic prices, because you're still maybe not ready to make your own, I would go to an Asian grocery store, and they're going to be weird brands, but it doesn't matter. They have a variety of some of it's canned, interestingly enough, but a
Really?
lot of it is like plastic, almost like how it comes in how tofu would come, how it's like almost like
Mm-hmm.
vacuum sealed in a
Mm-hmm.
plastic thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a hack
That's
for
cool.
guys who are really, really trying to pinch pennies.
Yeah.
And did we mention deli meats, plant-based deli meats?
No, go for it.
So, I mean, pretty much any brand, a lot of, well, most of them use seitan, so that's why they can get the macros that they get.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Be Free, but you have to have a Whole Foods. I don't think I found it anywhere other than Whole Foods,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But
Tofurkey
the
we
Simple
talked about.
Truth brand,
Simple Truth's
that's
pretty
from
good.
that's good. Of course, oh, we did mention Tofurkey.
Mm-hmm.
Field roast, that's a little bit harder to find. Can you think of any other brands?
Yeah, well, they used to have Eves, but now that's discontinued, which I'm sad about too. I'm sorry to bring that up. But, you know, good things come and go. But you know, there's all kinds of places like, you know, stores have their own brands and stuff like that. If you go to the deli meat or like next to the deli meat section, you'll probably be able to find some vegan ones now, which is cool. Before we
And
move on, oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
if you are just looking in the store and like you happen to stumble upon a new product, it happens because we're now in 2026 when new plant-based products pop up all the time.
Yeah.
And you're like looking for something with protein. I always recommend to people like, okay, this is how you like know that this is a good amount of protein in like by looking at the nutrition panel. You
Mm-hmm.
want something that is a 10-to-1 ratio, 10
10
being the number
calories.
of calories, 1 being the grams of protein.
Yeah.
So, for example, if something were 100 calories, then you want it to have around 10 grams of protein,
Mm-hmm.
right? 150, around 15 grams of protein.
Mm-hmm.
200, around 20 grams of protein. Okay, so really, really simple. So
Mm-hmm.
you can take this and discover new protein foods on your own.
Yeah, I really like that recommendation because if you do that for most of the food you eat, you'll find that hitting your protein targets becomes a lot easier. And then maybe even having a little space at the end of the day for a little treat or snacks in between things. Like you can, it'll keep you sane. I think if you're, because what happens in a lot of like newer dieters will do is they'll like be like, oh yeah, I'll have that one sandwich or whatever, right? And then they realize later, oh, that was 60% of my calories for the day and only like 10% of my protein. So now I'm playing catch up all the rest of today and it wasn't even that filling. You know what I mean? So if you are a little bit more mindful about that stuff and you're like, no, okay, I can modify this sandwich to have more protein, less calories, you know, less bread, more of the deli slices, more veggies. This is going to make a huge difference in terms of getting in that protein, feeling satiated from it, and not having to play catch up later, trying to hit your protein amount without a ton of calories coming along for the ride. And psychologically, it's going to be easier too if you don't feel like you're constantly playing catch up. You just feel like, yeah, this is pretty easy. I get my protein because I have these sources and I'm pretty full, and then I have a little bit of room for snacks. It just makes a world of difference. Before we move on, because I was thinking, what if we went over some specific meal examples that we like when we're cutting, if you want to? I was just going to mention some other protein cereal brands that I like because I'm like a junkie for this stuff. So you got the edamame puffs, you got the Premier Protein. Protein Cheerios is now a thing, and they're decent. Decent. I would say probably mix those with something or like have a small
Mix them with
amount.
edamame puffs.
Yeah,
That's
that would
perfect.
be that good. That's a good way to do it, and then have, like, berries in there to be more filling. So those can be really good. If you're in a pinch, maybe some kashi cereals-ish, okay, but, like, now we're starting to get down the line of, like, yeah, it's more of, like, a regular cereal, not so much a protein cereal. And then I'm trying to think, I think there was one more that I like to do sometimes. That might be it for now. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, there's you're right. There are more coming out all the time. So just keep your eyes peeled, guys. That sucks about the Wheaties though. Those were delicious.
Oh my god, so
Such a
heartbroken.
bummer. I know. Maybe
Ugh.
we could write a petition. Let's get everybody. Hey, if you guys want the Wheaties protein cereals back in stores, let's comment below. We'll get this going. I want to see. I want to rally support for this because that was like the best vegan protein cereal ever. Macros, I guess Special K protein, but I think there's something about the D3 sourcing. I don't really know.
Yeah, that is the thing. This is still a legit protein cereal.
Hmm.
Think I need to double check on the vitamin D.
Yeah.
I
But also they
think the ones
reformulated recently.
are the
Yeah.
cinnamon puff.
Uh-huh.
I think those are
Oh, really?
edible.
Edible. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, any of these things could work by mixing them with edamame puffs because edamame protein puffs are like flavorless. And so, but they're tons of protein in a small pack. So it's like you could kind of get away with a lot by just adding those to things, in my opinion. Yeah. Anyway, so what if we moved
Another great
on?
one for traveling. Put it go to the store and find your favorite vegan yogurt,
Yeah.
and then throw some edamame puffs in there, and you've got a really, really great
Heck
breakfast.
yeah, that's true. That's very true. What if we moved on to some of our favorite meals? Unless there's some other thing like higher level concept that you think would be good for people to understand. We talked about calorie density, protein, fiber, volume. What else,
Yeah,
if there's anything else?
I'd love to talk about, like, what are some of the most satiating foods? And you touched on
Hmm.
some of these, but I just kinda wanted to, like, round it off a little bit,
Hmm.
just to define some of these things.
Hmm.
Some of the most satiating foods, I already mentioned legumes in general, so any kind of lentils, any kind of beans.
Hmm.
They are a little bit more calorie dense, right? But they're jam packed with vitamins, minerals, micronutrients. And
Hmm.
I still, if I'm cutting, I'm still trying to include, one serving of legumes each day.
I like that.
And that can be tofu. And that's fine if that's the route you take. But if there's no tofu in your day, then I definitely try to get some kind of legume.
Hmm.
Similar potatoes. Um, we have like it's actually a really old study. I should have like actually pulled that up beforehand, but they basically surveyed so many like tons and tons of people about like, all right, here are the foods we're giving you. How would you rate them on like satiety? And like potatoes and legumes and popcorn, obvious like
Interesting.
interestingly enough, high up there. And I like to add in there like super firm tofu.
Hmm.
Again, sometimes if you are really, really like low calorie, super firm tofu can be a
Hmm.
little bit harder to fit in,
Yeah,
but it's so satiating.
it's
I
true.
usually try to have it for lunch
Hmm.
because I feel like if I have a good lunch, then I'm usually set up for feeling mostly satisfied for the rest of the day.
You know what I like to do with that is
Hmm.
I'll put it in like a soup. If I put it in a soup, then I've got the combo of the dense protein source, but with all the volume of the liquid, right? And
Yes.
soups in
But you're gonna
general,
need stuff after that. Yeah.
yeah, soups in general are just they're top tier in my opinion for dieting because you can get a lot of space in your stomach filled, include some really tasty things in there, but it's not like, that's all that you have to eat is the amount of tofu that's in the soup. You get the whole thing and then you can throw a ton of veggies in there without even affecting your calories very much. I am like a big soup guy, especially after this last cut that I did. I was like, yeah, That's pretty awesome.
So veggies obviously are going to be a huge hack. A lot of times people will come in and for coaching, and they'll say, "Oh man, I'm just like really, really hungry. What can I do?" If you just have like a bowl of vegetables,
Mhm.
it can be so filling. And it won't ruin your diet, right?
Mhm.
So we talk about like high fiber foods. Obviously, vegetables are in there, right?
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
also want to not discredit like having whole grains,
Mhm.
having things like apples with the skin on. We
Mhm.
mentioned berries already.
Yeah.
We talked about non-starchy vegetables.
Mhm.
Using all of these strategically are going to be really, really like for satiety.
Yeah. I think probably my biggest source of fiber on a normal basis is probably oats. Sorry, my dog's freaking out. I don't know
Uh,
why. But oats are my go-to. And like when I look back at my, yeah, like I'm looking at, if I go to my chronometer and I'm like, what gave me the most? Because that's cool about chronometers. You can always look back at your daily report and you can be like, what gave me the most of X nutrient or Y nutrient? And that can really help you figure out like what is doing the most damage in terms of calories or giving you the most benefit in terms of, protein or whatever. And when I look at my fiber, let me just do this real quick. Yeah, rolled oats is always the top of my list. So that was 40% of my fiber yesterday. It's just like one of those things, and granted, you do have to be a little careful. It is a little bit more calorie dense, so you try to use the amount that is necessary to get you the satiation you're looking for and the fiber you're looking for without going crazy. But I find that especially if I have like a long day ahead or I'm not going to be able to eat for a while, eating something with fiber like that, even if it is a little bit more calories than say a protein cereal, seems to keep me fuller for longer. So because the fiber just delays gastric emptying. And so like I personally, when I know I'm gonna have a longer day or it's gonna be longer before I can eat again, I'm doing the oats like pretty much every time. Yeah.
so you wanted to talk about some of your favorite meals. So why don't
Yeah.
you lead?
Or you know what? Let's save that for the end because now that I think about it, why don't we talk about some things like strategic meal timing and things like that? Because that could be something that's a little tricky for people is when to put meals. Some people think, oh, I got to do fasting or oh, I got to have small meals all these times a day. What do you tell people like that who are like, what do I do about meal timing?
Yeah, so meal timing, it can be a very powerful tool to stave off like that uncomfortable hunger.
Hmm.
Some people, it's worth playing with the number of meals that you have. Of course, this depends on the number of calories you have.
Hmm.
But we don't have to necessarily always have that strict 3 meals a day.
Hmm.
Having 4 or 5 meals, I wouldn't really recommend going up to like 6. Definitely not 7,
Hmm.
because then you're just kind of like constantly having to prepare food and eat food, and that's
Hmm.
kind of like creating a food focus
Hmm.
that could be problematic. But figuring out like what works for you, figuring out like, all right, so I'll give an example. My most struggle bus time of day for actually feeling hungry is usually like around 2, 3, 4 o'clock.
Hmm.
Time period of the day is always a struggle. So, this is a lot of the reason why I'm like, oh, I like having that super firm tofu then, because
Mm.
a lot of times that will carry me through that fine. I like to have a good lunch so that the discomfort of that time frame is sort of mitigated as much as possible.
Mhm.
Some people might need to have a little small snack, like right before or during that time, right?
Mhm.
So playing with your
Yeah.
meal timing, your number of meals,
Mhm.
and it's gonna be different for each person. What about you, Sawyer?
I was exactly gonna say that because I think that once you start if you're listening to somebody and they're like, "Oh, this is the magic way to do it and it's super simple," and then you try that and you're like, "That didn't work for me." Sometimes people think they're broken and that they're just not gonna be able to lose weight, and I just think it's so different for different people. Because when I was hearing you talk about, "Oh, this is my problem time of day for me," mine, it was like at 7 or 8 PM,
Hmm.
and so I found that what I would do when I was dieting is I would be like, "All right, I know I'm gonna get hungriest right then. So if I save about this many calories for that amount of time and I try to focus on filling foods," what I ended up doing most of the time was having like a big bowl of soup at that around that time and then a little something sweet afterwards. And that was just like the perfect 1-2 punch to take out my hunger, make sure I wasn't going to bed hungry. and made me feel like I could look forward to that end of the day, so that even if I was a little bit hungry before then, I knew once I got to that point in the day, I was gonna get to indulge a little bit with a bigger meal and, tons of tasty little things in the soup and then the sweet thing right afterwards. That was my jam. So what I ended up doing a lot of the rest of the day was like, okay, I got my workout in the morning, so I'm gonna eat something with a decent amount of carbs, but not too much, a little bit of caffeine. Like I figured it out like about how much I needed to get through a workout and do with it that amount of food. And then after I got back from the workout, I would kind of say, all right, well, I'm not hungry for like another hour or two. So maybe once I get to that point where I'm starting to notice I'm getting a little hungrier, then I'll eat a pretty, a decent sized meal, but it's still going to be like keeping the calories under control. And that way I have more calories for that later meal, later on in the day. And so, yeah, and maybe I'd have a snack before that last one. So it was usually like me waiting until the later parts of the days where I knew I was going to be hungriest to allocate most of my calories to. But the thing is like that schedule didn't develop until I was like a month and a half or a month into my dieting phase. So I think that for people to think, "Oh, I'm going to do it this way," and they've never been through a diet before, I think you got to listen to your body a little bit and listen to the rhythms of your life. It's about like kind of pedaling on the bike for a while. And once you get pedaling, you can start going a little bit faster and not thinking about it as much because you're just kind of in a good rhythm and you know how many calories you have left and when you usually get hungry and all that stuff. So I like your advice of saying like try things out. Don't get too committed to things too quickly. Don't get really excited about, oh, if I do 6 meals a day, it's going to be the perfect solution.
Yeah.
Try it out. Try it out because you don't really know until you do it. And sometimes you're just going to get there intuitively by saying, well, I noticed that when I had this thing, I got more full. I'm going to try that again. And then you stack a bunch of those things on top of each other. Before you know it, you have your own unique way of doing things that you feel good doing. So,
And similarly, so I love that. I tell people that tip all the time to save something for the evening that you can look forward to.
hmm
And for me, and I think for a lot of females out there, it's like the evening time comes and we're done. We're like done with all of like the like healthy eating and like all of the like being diligent on your diet. And so like
hmm
if we've already planned ahead for that like treat and
hmm
we know what it is and we can like hang on all day and look forward to that and be like,
hmm
I know that I'm going to have on the blank. And I would
hmm
rather have that at night and enjoy that nightly routine
hmm
than stray from my diet and use my flexible dieting to have this earlier, right?
hmm
This can be a game changer. For years for me, it was having cereal in the evening. I
I like
always
that.
make cereal, almost always.
That was my usual one, actually. After the soup, I would have some cereal too. So that's cool. Yeah.
And now it's because we just got a Ninja Creamy. Now it's
Mm,
exclusively.
yeah, that's awesome. That's another good one. I think that's really good advice because not only do you have the long-term light at the end of the tunnel of knowing, hey, this is a temporary phase. I'm going to lose some fat and then I'm going to go back to maintenance eating and I'll be okay. That's important to have on the horizon. But if you don't have a little bit of something to look forward to in the day, in terms of like a little bit more of a fun food. And yeah, usually it's good for the end of the day to be like, I've done all my stuff. I did my workout. I did all the things I needed to do for work today.
Serving the vegetables. I had enough serving of fruit. I had all
Yeah.
my water. Now
Yeah.
it's fun time.
Now it's fun time. It's time for me to chill and like watch my show and eat the snack that I like. So I think it's good to have that little light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the day. Like I'm doing the things I need to do so that I can enjoy this totally guilt free, knowing that I hit all the things I need, checked all the boxes I need to check, and I get to enjoy this. And I'm still within the confines of my plan. Like that is the best feeling when you set your life up
Mhm.
like that. So yeah, I love that. Okay, so we talked about calorie density and food choices. We talked about meal timing. What else do you think is important that we cover? I just want to make sure we don't miss anything.
So I wanted to I have like a hot list
All
of
right,
like, I could just rapid fire off some hack foods for
let's
you
do it.
guys.
You're chomping at the bit. Let's go. Alice, enlighten us.
And some of this requires, Googling some recipes, but these are the things that get me through competition prep. I mean, so silken tofu.
Mm.
Use that to make desserts such as the Ninja Creamy Protein Ice Cream.
Mhm.
And Danny has some awesome chocolate mousse recipes made from silken tofu. I also make a cheese sauce out of silken tofu. Like tofu is one of the best like hacks. When you do silken tofu, it's less protein, but it's still very like creamy and very like an
Mhm.
indulgent sort of thick thing that you can make a lot of like dairy imitation out of, and it's like almost free calorie wise, guys. So huge, huge hack.
Yeah.
Hummus, similarly to the silken tofu, I like to make my own soy yogurt now. I make it out of
Wow.
soy milk.
That's
And,
cool.
think about to like back when we were meat eating, right? Like people would
Mhm.
be like, use yogurt to replace all your cheese and all your mayo and all your
Mm.
sour cream. Make your own vegan yogurt out of soy milk. It's practically free. And now you've got amazing stuff for your sandwiches and your bowls and your, it's just
Wow.
mind
Do we
blowing.
have a video about that yet?
We don't. I put
My
these
god.
recipes are in my book, by the way, if you guys are
Oh, that's
interested.
right. You did drop the book. I'm glad you plugged it. Yeah, Alice just dropped a book, guys. All needs the support, and also just the fact that she's a genius when it comes to this stuff. We gotta glean as much knowledge as we can. Yeah, but hopefully we make a video about that soon too, because everybody needs to hear about this protein
Yeah.
yogurt type thing. Because I am really curious now about that too. So do you want to give us a brief description of how you make it just so people can kind of start to wrap their heads around it a little bit? I'm curious.
Yeah. So if you're going to make yogurt, do yourself a favor and get the right appliance for it because fermenting anything at home is a little bit of work, right? And it's time consuming. But if you have specifically an instant pot with a yogurt setting,
Hmm.
it's pretty much going to do all the work for you. And
Mhm.
literally, we just get a soy milk that has like as few ingredients as possible just so that it won't mess with the fermentation process. So something like
Mhm.
West soy milk,
Mhm.
something like the Trader Joe's soy beverage. And then you're gonna get your culture, and you're gonna and that's basically it. That's basically all you're putting in there, guys. And you
Where
just
does the
let
culture come from? Where do you get that?
you can get them off Amazon. If you don't want to buy an actual culture, you can also buy um a vegan yogurt and add it to it. Obviously, you want something that's not already sweetened, ideally, but
Mhm.
you would have to add more. You probably have to add like maybe a cup of that
Mhm.
yogurt. And some yogurt brands, and this is whether you're plant based or not, they like, oh, these are all the cultures we have in there. And sometimes the cultures aren't really still alive, so it'll be hit or miss. If you get
Mhm.
your own cultures, then it's more likely to work.
Okay. What's it called? If you were to look it up and get it online, what would you type in?
Oh gosh, I don't have the brand memorized, but I mean, if you just look up like, yogurt culture on Amazon, you can come up with something.
Okay.
They come in these teeny tiny little, but yeah, if you guys want to check out my book, you can, it's on the Vegan Proteins website for sale. And
Mhm.
it's also at payhip.com/Alice Robinson
Okay.
for the specifics of that. Okay, back to my rapid
What?
fire stuff.
Yeah. Well, what's your book called real quick before we move on? What's the title of the book?
Athlete's Guide to Go Vegan.
Nice. Okay. Thank you for sharing it. All right, go ahead. Rapid fire. Go.
All right. Puff kamut is like practically free, very, very voluminous. Cauliflower rice is
Mhm.
just going to add these two things can just add volume to various recipes, right?
Mhm.
You already mentioned soup. I have soup basically every day when I'm dieting.
Mhm.
It's usually like tomato or just a broth with a bunch of vegetables and my protein of choice.
Mhm.
Powdered peanut butter, powdered almond butter, powdered cashew butter. You can get all of these from PB2 brands.
Mhm.
Almond milk, pretty much free, right?
Mhm.
You're going to want to get extracts, vanilla extract, almond extract, maple extract, coconut extract, pineapple extract. These things are like free, guys, and it adds a lot of flavor to your food, especially your beverages, right? Or your
Mhm.
oatmeal. If you're trying to make anything like taste like anything else. Speaking of, we talk about like chocolate cravings being a thing when
Mm.
we're on a diet. Like you can make anything chocolate flavored if you have some unsweet cocoa powder or cacao powder, whichever one
Cacao.
you prefer, and some of that vanilla extract and a sweetener of choice. And I
Mhm.
always recommend to people either stevia or monk fruit. These are
Mhm.
both not artificial, they are natural sweeteners.
Mhm.
The monk fruit, I recommend you get these not in a grocery store, neither of them, because if you buy them in a grocery store, they're going to have all these added fillers and sugar alcohols to them.
Mhm.
So you buy them in bulk online. I recommend going on Amazon, looking up pure monk fruit extract bulk.
Mm.
I think my brand is like Morning Pep or something. It comes in this huge, huge container.
Mhm.
You're gonna look at it. It's gonna be a little bit of sticker shock, but monk fruit goes a long way. That container is gonna last you a long time, guys.
Wow, cool.
So like you can just make like a chocolate protein shake. You can make a chocolate pancake. You can make a chocolate oatmeal.
Mhm.
You name it. Anything that's appropriate to make chocolate, you can make chocolate like your foods that you're eating throughout the day, and that can help you reduce those chocolate cravings.
Wow. Dude, I really wish that we had done this episode before my cut because I
For
feel
your
like I would have had an easier time. But maybe I should have just reached out to you. I'd known you for longer than I should have just been like, Alice, just give me the rundown of what to eat. But this is really good. I'm thinking this is gonna help a lot of people. So continue. Let's keep going. I don't want to stop the train. Let's go.
a nutritional yeast for Parmesan cheese replacement. Sprinkle it on top of anything savory. You're going to get a couple extra grams of protein. It's a complete protein. Awesome.
Hmm.
Always having, if you, I cook so much at home, right? And getting spray oil, like cooking spray, instead of having like the oil in like the jug. You
Hmm.
don't have to get like the cheap Pam, right? Because we don't want to throw all that away. I like to order glass spray bottles meant
Hmm.
for spray oil, and then you can just pour it into there, and then you're reducing waste.
Hmm.
But it helps you use a minimal amount of oil in your cooking because sometimes it's very hard to cook without oil.
Hmm.
The snacks, so pickles, vegan kimchi,
Hmm.
pickled banana peppers, pickled jalapeno out. Okay, all of these things. Now, careful, they are higher in sodium, but
Hmm.
as long as you're not like going to town on some pickles, it shouldn't mess with your weight scale too much.
Yeah.
Okay. You to save just a few calories, you can invest in some diet condiments, some things like no sugar added ketchup, no sugar added jelly. There's so many varieties. Like it would take me forever to list them all, but
Hmm.
mustard is pretty much free, guys. So if you're
Hmm.
making a same want some flavor for anything that's a little spicy,
Hmm.
mustard pretty much free. The soy noodles, the shirataki noodles, Dave and I were
Hmm.
just talking about that on my call the other day.
Hmm.
Um,
Hot
have
sauces.
hot
It's another one.
sauces, yes. A lot of those are practically free.
Hmm.
My favorite is just getting Frank's classic hot sauce. A lot
Hmm.
of people are like, "That's vegan?" If you get the plain Frank's Red Hot, yes, it
Hmm.
is.
Hmm.
And plenty of others. Again, we're coming back to, remember I mentioned the peppers earlier, the frozen peppers. They're pretty much
Hmm.
free.
Hmm.
Spicy stuff a lot of times is going to be like your friend when
Hmm.
you're done.
Hmm.
Talking about caffeine real quick. Caffeine can be a powerful tool to stave off hunger, but it's also
Agree.
very easy to overdo it on your cut. So
Hmm.
make sure if you're having caffeine, you know how much caffeine you're having. You're not going overboard.
Hmm.
I like to if I'm going to utilize caffeine, I like to have very weak coffee. I like to try, or I might have like a soda or something. A soda typically only has like 35. What is it? What do you milligrams or the grams? I'm not
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the what you're getting, but also like when you have soda, are you doing like a specific brand, like a no or low sugar kind of
I
one?
really like the Zevia soda because it doesn't have any added color or anything to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's kind of hard to find sometimes. But if I
Yeah.
can't find Zevia, then if this is really if I'm like at the vegan strong booth, I might have like a Coke Zero or something
Hmm.
because you have to be on, you have to be talking to people, you have to
Hmm.
be, sometimes you need that little bit of caffeine, especially if I'm dieting. Did you have something
Yeah.
to add to that?
I really like the Ollie Pops. That was like a treat for me while I was dieting, and some of them have caffeine, some of them don't. But like, I really like that. I was never even a soda person, so it wasn't even like I was replacing anything. It was just like a cool little treat that was like 40 calories. So I was like, yeah,
It
okay.
really suppresses your appetite, guys. But I
Hmm.
would say definitely cut off the caffeine at 2 p.m. at the latest.
Yeah.
And then if you are a specialty beverage person who are just like you got to have something in your hands, you got to have something, maybe a hot beverage, maybe something that feels special, especially like in the evening. This is a
Hmm.
great swap as well if you're a person that's like I get off of work and I need to have a beer or a glass of wine. Look into dessert teas. I'm not saying decaffeinated teas because a lot of people don't like those. But
Hmm.
you can get Swiss water decaffeinated teas and stuff. And and coffees, and then they don't have any like chemicals added to do the decaffeinated process. So that
Mhm.
for those that are interested in that route. But I'm really talking about dessert teas. You know, you go into the tea aisle and you see this very colorful wall of like all these teas. Most of them are dessert teas. They don't have any
Mm.
caffeine, they don't have any sugar, they're very fragrant. They're usually like fruity, vanilla-y, those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So that's another thing, like having hydrated enough, having something special can really help a lot of people getting through their diet.
Yeah, and a little stevia in there, monk fruit can go a long way, in terms of making it taste really good.
Chamomile, yeah,
Yeah.
feels really great. Similar, we're on the beverage kick. SodaStream, another appliance that I will plug. We are obsessed. We get a SodaStream and we get a special adapter that will basically let us set up a larger tank
Oh my
to it.
gosh. Oh, wow, you guys are super intense. Oh my
Because
god.
look, if you would just go through those teeny little, there's no way. We're not paying for that. They're like $20 a pop.
Oh,
So if you
yeah.
go to a brewery or if you go to like it has we actually go to like this it's an actual business that specializes in like, CO2 for like restaurants and such.
Mhm,
It doesn't
mhm.
look like it looks like an office building. You walk in there. And that's the best. If you can find something like that, then that's your best bet. But
Wow.
breweries are the second easiest place to find places where you can just buy a giant canister of CO2, food grade
Wow.
CO2.
That's really
And
cool.
then flavoring that with stuff like True Line. You could just do a splash of vanilla, tastes like a diet vanilla Coke, right?
Mhm, mhm.
There was a time we were like juicing ginger to do a little bit of ginger
Wow.
flavoring. You can get a bunch of those diet like syrups if you go to like, I mean, there's some on the coffee aisle, but those are usually pretty boring. But if you go to like a restaurant
Mhm.
store, a lot of times you can find like the aisle of all the syrups.
Dude,
And then
this
you can
is
get pretty much any flavor you want.
you were the person for this episode, I'll tell you what. This is really cool stuff because, I mean, so much of this is like I mean, what it comes to mind is, like, somebody who's a real gym junkie just building their own home gym and being like, "I could do everything I want here," and, like, you're doing that in the kitchen, you know what I mean? You're figuring out, "Okay, I like these products. How do I make them at home? How do I make even more low calorie, higher protein? Like, how am I doing this?" And I think it's important that people understand, like, you're not going to figure all this out like overnight. And, even some of the stuff you're talking about might feel out of reach for them right now. Like some of it does for me, even because I'm not that advanced of a dieter either. But it's really cool to think, wow, there's a lot of room to grow here. I can make this a whole like lifestyle. You know what I mean? I could have an easier time indulging but still maintaining the body composition that I want to have. And that's where it
Absolutely.
gets exciting. You know what I mean? So I think it's really cool what you're talking about, even though it's like now we're getting really niche and specific about things. It's like, this is as far as you want to take it, dude. Like, this is like if you really care about your body composition and you want to feel less limited while you're dieting down, if that's something you need to do periodically or you have a lot of room to grow in that department, man, the more you invest in this kind of stuff, like the soda streams and the Instapots and air fryers and the understanding which products are going to
Ice cream.
be, yeah, Ninja Creamies, like those kinds of things are going to make your life so much easier and you're going to feel like you're indulging still. It's never going to be as easy, I don't think, as somebody who's just not caring about anything, going out in the world, buying everything and, going to restaurants and stuff and not tracking anything, right? Never going to be that easy. But like you've gotten this good at this stuff because you're like, I can have my cake and eat it too. I can find a way to enjoy my life more, think about it less, and have the body composition I want. And that's where,
Save money.
right. And it's like,
And just be a happier vegan. I'm sorry. I live in the middle of nowhere. We have very limited restaurant options. So learning how to make these things on your own, whether they be diet versions or not,
yeah.
is going to increase your quality of life so
Mm-hmm.
much.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's
like
so true.
barely even have to go to the middle of the grocery store because it's like we know how to make all this. Why would I?
Yeah.
Why would I buy? Why would I
That's
spend
so
like five
cool.
dollars?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a cool thing. And some people will be like, "Oh, that's too much work." But it's like, well, think about also the fact that like you do your homework and then you get to benefit from it forever. Like you invest in the equipment, you understand the recipes, and then now you just do it like all the time. It's easy. You don't even think about it anymore, but like, just the benefit of having done that homework is like it pays off for years. It's like investing in gym equipment and then getting to use it and not have to drive yourself to the gym and subscribe, you know what I mean, for years. So I think that you know, what we're talking about here, while it might be a little bit overwhelming for people, it might be like a little bit like, oh, this feels like a little much for just to be, you know, fit or whatever. But like the truth is, it's going to make your life easier in the long run. That's why we're talking about it. So yeah, that's amazing. Is there more? Do you have more hacks? Are we
Just a
still in?
couple more. I'm almost
Okay.
done.
All
But
right. I love
remember,
it.
remember in the beginning of this episode that I said, guys, I am lazy in the kitchen. Like all of these things that I make are mostly like if they are time consuming recipes, then they are set it and forget it kind of recipes or set a
Mm,
timer to go do something else recipes because
mhm, mhm.
I am not a person that's going to be slaving away over this stuff. Not at all.
Yeah.
So I'm all about efficiency. I'm all about saving money, whatever is economical,
Alice's
whatever is
no nonsense kitchen. Yeah.
my last things. Protein pastas.
I can't
Um,
believe we didn't bring that up now until now.
right?
Good one. Yeah.
And then the best protein bar when you're dieting, I gotta plug the Nugo Slim bars. Make sure you're getting the vegan varieties, the
Mhm.
chocolate peanut butter, the chocolate mint, the chocolate coconut, and there's one that's like a raspberry, I think, as well. There's
I thought
those
the
four.
raspberry one wasn't vegan though.
I think it's vegan.
The slim one is vegan, but maybe the non one. I don't know. I don't know. That's just what Dave
Double
told me.
check. Double
I don't
check.
know.
The other three definitely are though. Definitely.
Okay.
There's one that has
That's
coffee and caffeine in it. I'm like, I'm just gonna
really.
skip that.
It is a weird
Yeah.
place to find caffeine, you know, in a bar, but whatever.
Yeah, I agree. But that's kind of a trend right now. And then the best protein shake when you're dieting is going to be the Owen shakes, only what you need, OWYN. Look for
Mhm.
the 32 grams of protein. They're called Pro Elite Series.
Mhm.
You talk about having a 10-to-1 ratio. This sounds like a 10-to-3 ratio or something.
Yeah. It's like 32 grams of protein with only 200 calories. I'm like, how did they, what witchcraft is this? This is crazy. Sorcery. Yeah. It's crazy.
That's my rapid fire list, I think.
Man, Alice, you killed it. If people don't, you know what, guys, if you don't thumbs up this video for the amount of effort that Alice just went to make you guys as fit as and as happy as possible, I just don't know what to tell you. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We had a really good time filming this one, and I learned some things too. So that was really cool. Thank you, Alice, for sharing your Bikini Pro wisdom with us. And we might have to do another one. And I definitely think we need to do a soy yogurt video. I think that needs to
Yeah,
happen at some point.
we could do
Do you
that.
agree? All right, guys. Well, follow us on the socials. Vegan Proteins Alice, Soy Boy Fitness Coaching on Instagram. Check us out on veganproteins.com. Please like this and share this with your friends. And we'll see you guys in the next one.